Welcome. If you're here today, I imagine you are interested in learning a little bit more about building coaching cultures. Welcome. My name is Danielle Rocheleau. I'm the CEO at Laridae, and I'm here joined by my colleagues, Julia, Zanele, and Valentina, who are each skilled coaches in various environments. What we're going to be doing today is digging into just that. What is coaching, and have a good conversation about it. A little bit about Laridae before we get started. Essentially, Laridae supports mission-driven organizations to shift cultures for greater impact. So we work with leaders at all levels to build clarity and to develop the skills necessary to bring that strategy to life. All right, from there, maybe I'll ask each of you just to do a bit of an introduction of yourself. I'll start with Julia, then Zanele, and then Valentina.
Thanks, Danielle. Like Danielle said, my name is Julia Bubrin. I am a professional certified coach accredited with the International Coach Federation, the ICF, which is probably an acronym we might reference over the course of our conversation. I am a learning consultant with Laridae, and I do a lot of management training and more recently, a lot of coach training. Where I really like to coach is supporting leaders to have great conversations and ideally helping people navigate those often emotionally charged or challenging scenarios to just move through those things and come out the other side with some level of relationship building and respect of your colleagues and the people that you're collaborating with. So I work with leaders at all levels of organizations, various stages of their careers. It's really about how do we bring our full selves to work, and that's what I love to do in coaching.
Thank you, Julia. Over to
I'm
you, Zanele.
Valentina Kibedi. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. We will edit that out.
Go ahead, Zanele.
Hi, I thought Valentina was going. Hi, I'm Zanele Nkosi, and I am also an accredited ICF coach. I have been coaching for about 16 years now, executive coaching, and as well as leadership development and facilitation. My biggest passion, and especially at the moment, is really some about what we're going to have a conversation about today, which is how we are impacting change in individuals within a system or an organization, and how that then leads to broader systemic change and different ways of people engaging with each other within organizations and businesses to make for much more inclusive, much more generative, better decision making, more psychologically safe organizations. And yeah, and love this business of coaching and working with people to support those shifts within them and organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Valentina.
Hey, I'm Valentina Kibedi. I'm the Director of Services at Laridae, and I've been coaching formally and informally for a long time, and it's part of what I do through my work at Laridae, and I've also been coaching beyond that for many years. I've lost track of how many years now, but it's also interesting because I feel like my coaching habit started even earlier, because in my early life in athletics is when I started coaching, and when that sort of emerged as a love and an interest for me. And I've taken a lot from that and brought it into the world of work and professional development. And I think there's so much overlap. And I've had the good fortune of working with leaders and managers from across all continents. And what I love is seeing people unlock things that help them make what often seems like a small shift and has an enormous ripple effect, not just on their personal and work lives, but on all of the people that they impact in their sphere of influence in their work. I think coaching is one of the most underrated and most powerful skills, and I'm a big time fan, so I'm happy to be here talking about it.
Excellent. Thank you all. We're going to dig right in, and we've each spoken to this idea of coaching. What is coaching?
I can kick us off here. Their coaching is and Valentina, I really like, and Zanele, how we started just our introductions, because even talking about the ways in which each of us have used this skill set and have applied this in our various contexts, even that shows the breadth and wide range of application. But also, Danielle, I like the question because I think it is important to have people understand, well, what is this thing that everyone talks about? It's this word that's out there. What does it even mean? It's kind of like become this thing that managers and leaders today are like, yeah, I'm coaching. That's great. Yeah, I'll do that thing. I so coaching, they're the essence of coaching, and I think most professional organizations, including the ICF, comes down to partnering with an individual to create meaningful outcomes and actions. And the partnering piece is really critical in coaching. When we think about leadership development and professional coaching, as a coach, we are asking questions, we are sharing reflections, but we are specifically helping to direct some thinking. We, as coaches, are not directing the solutions. And that's like the most interesting thing that I find about coaching is that you're partnering with another person to help them find solutions that are aligned with themselves, that are aligned with their values. And really another expression that I hear a lot is tapping into an individual's potential and an individual's innermost world and values. And that's what we do as coaches. We really listen for those things and help partner and craft with that person what is meaningful and how do we move forward with this? How do they want to move forward with this?
Thank you, Julia. Zanele, Valentina, want to jump in?
Yeah, to add to that, so I love that piece you said about the person's inner world, because I do think also of coaching as a catalyst, right, between a person's inner world experience as well as the outer, and how they're able to really reflect on how to align those two things, how to work into their values, and how they exist in the world. And coaching just allows for that thinking and exploration and development of possibilities between that inner world and the external, and to explore that, and how to be the best you can be within the context of those two beings, I guess, in the world. A word is escaping me, but that's really how I think of it, and that the coach really provides that partnership for that depth of exploration.
Thanks, Melly.
I agree with what both of you have said, and I love talking about this. And this is a question that I feel like I could answer in so many different ways and at different phases of my life. And like one of the things that sticks out for me about what is coaching is at the root of it, I think it's the foundation is seeing people as capable. And Julia, you always say, instead of hold people accountable, one phrase I learned from you is hold people capable, which I find really awesome. And it completely changes the way a leader leads when they start from that place. And it's something that I see a lot of people not doing in their organizations. And I think coaching, one of the interesting things as well that is kind of the shift of it is that you're shifting from the expectation that if someone's coming to you that you have to have the answers, to how can you help answers emerge from the person. And again, holding them capable means that you believe in their ability and have the skills to help bring that out, which ultimately has, like, when you think about the ripple effect that can have, it's massive. So you're going from, okay, I have to have the answers, I have to hold the control, I have to give the advice, to how am I being the catalyst as well for other people to do that. And that's really unique, especially when I think about how most of us are brought up. We're raised often in school systems where you have to have the right answers. You have to get the thing right. You have to do all these things. And so it's natural that we go into the world of work and we continue that thing. We have to get it right. We have to have the right answer. If someone comes to us, it's an indicator of our expertise, our worth, and everything to be able to provide the right answer or to hold that. And like coaching just shifts all of that on its head. And so I think it makes people nervous at first when they're thinking about what coaching as a skill is, what a coaching culture means, and what it means for the people who are engaging with it. And then when you feel what it does and see the impacts, it actually gets at all these things that leaders say they want to see, but probably don't know how to get to.
Yeah, excellent. I'm hearing, from each of you, there's an element of individual exploration. So coaching is really about creating an environment to allow for that exploration and for the individual to really start to understand how they are capable in moving through whatever challenge they're facing. Valentina, you brought in this idea, almost this, I'll call it the myth of management, right? How many folks deal with imposter syndrome in a management position because they feel like they have to have all the answers? And this is, again, shifting the conversation, it sounds like, to allow them to come up with the answers in a pretty intentional way.
Yeah. And the other thing, I think that sometimes people who aren't as familiar with coaching might think, oh, it becomes very like feelings based or just like on a different level, or the most common things people go into is, oh, are we not going to sort of open up a can of worms into topics that might not be relevant? Like, I don't want to coach my manager who's coming to me with a question about all of their like personal life things. No, it's not therapy. It's not coaching through feelings. It's very future focused. It's very growth oriented, but sometimes it does help unlock barriers that are shifting there. And it's also not mentoring necessarily. Sometimes it's tied to that, but it's not like, okay, here's how I've done it, so let me coach you into doing that. That's the cool thing about being a coach, is that you don't have to necessarily have expertise in the thing that you're helping somebody to unlock or find the solution for. And that's really powerful for leaders who are often leading people in lots of domains that they might not be the top technical expert in. And so, how do you be a great enabler as a leader? How do you unlock other people's potentials? Building the coaching skill is how you're actually going to be a lot more effective, especially when you're supporting people where you are not the technical or functional expert.
Anything you would add, Julia or Zanele?
Yeah, there's a piece here
So,
that I'm really appreciating about the relationship, and I think right before Zanelli and I were having, or we were just sort of sharing some of this, the relationship between the individual and the organization, and really like I'm interested in moving into this area of broadly coaching culture and what that is, what that does, and I think that we're really speaking to that. Culture is not something that just exists on its own outside of people. Culture is something that is activated by individuals, and the experience of that is felt by individuals in organizations. And I think for me, when I see coaches doing their thing, and shout out to my own coach trainers who shared that idea of holding people capable, because like that is a concept that has just stayed with me over the last sort of 10 to 15 years. That is a really big difference in how an individual chooses to show up. There's a whole other level of intention in this thing that we call a coaching culture. It is a culture that thinks about how do we show up for each other? How do we show up with each other? Zanelli, I really like what you said earlier. How do I even exist in this world? And those are choices that leaders make. Leaders do over the course of their careers and professional lives. There are choices that we're making in how do I exist here in this moment? What are my options for how I show up for this person, for my team, to navigate whatever this moment is. And I think that that's a really interesting, like sort of like these two aspects of coaching culture. There's that individual, and then that impact on the whole system, the entirety.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Zanele.
And I heard recently, I saw the words around, kind of leaders are nodes within that system, right? So if we start to, as leaders, step into the way that we are able to manage ourselves, how to understand that internal, external, as I said, with a coach, and start to develop that capability ourselves, the impact is so much greater in terms of maintaining. And a couple of things you guys have said is around so that curiosity. And you didn't use that word, but for me, is about this is what coaching is about. So not only are you holding people capable, which I also love, by the way, and I often say that people are experts in their own lives, and mine is to support them to really elevate that expertise. But it's also about maintaining a curiosity and being open to, again, as Valentina said earlier about that potential of being wrong, but just being open to, okay, so what if I am wrong, but how am I curious about this current context? What is it that I can add? Another coaching thing that I like to say to people is, are you a bringer of chaos or are you a bringer of calm? And and as leaders, if we can hold that as things are coming at us, is how am I creating that space for either that calm or the growth or development, and ask questions that are really fundamental to coaching, right? Because coaches really are always trying to evoke the curiosity, a different way of seeing things by doing that thing of not telling, but asking the questions. So if we as leaders are able to see ourselves as a tiny little emotional system or a reactive system within the broader system, how we handle that and coach ourselves to better respond and act within environments is really what ensures that we create those cultures, those coaching cultures within businesses much more, organizations, but much more effectively. It's a long
Zanele,
run on
something
answer there. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I love that. And something that I want to sort of like follow a thread there that I think is really important when we're talking about coaching cultures is another word that is used a lot is systems. And so for me, a question that has really driven a lot of my coaching practice more recently is how are we coaching ethically within systems? People do work within organizational systems, social systems, political systems. And I think one thing that coaches really do, yes, we are holding people capable. I really like what you said there, Nelly, on people are experts in their own lives. And coaches also challenge an existing norm. Coaches also are there to sort
Right.
of push thinking and also hold you both to your values, but also like if things are going off, coaches can be a really powerful source of what is possible, what is ethical, what is and like in partnership with another person.
Mm,
But that also, from an individual lens, that takes a lot of self-regulation, a lot of self-awareness as the coach to be aware of what am I hearing? Yes, what am I listening for? But then as a result, what am I then hearing? I'm an individual. I have my own set of biases and ways of thinking that my conscious brain and my subconscious brain just go into. So as a coach, my task is also to understand that thinking, to self-regulate that thinking, and to bring to very transparent and full awareness, and also to bring to the conversation is what is happening in this system that this person can actually move forward with and function within.
I have so many questions coming up as you're each speaking because I want to dig into so many parts of what you're saying. One thing that's coming up for me here is, so we've talked about coaching essentially being an individual experience in some ways. We've now broadened it into an organizational experience through building a coaching culture. Many individuals understand coaching from, the leadership coach that we hire outside of the organization to be able to have this one-to-one relationship. But what we are talking about is bringing it into the organization and making this part of the DNA of how we engage with each other when we're looking at building a coaching culture. So what would you suggest a healthy coaching culture feels like within an organization? And what actually changes as an organization shifts to that culture? So that's a two-part piece there. What does a healthy coaching culture feel like? And what changes as that organization is making the shift to realize that?
The biggest thing for me, and Zanele, you brought up the word curiosity, which I was like, it is the biggest word for me in coaching. And I think the biggest impact that I see is people are curious. And as a result, people can make mistakes and fail without feeling that there are career repercussions, punishment, uh, things that feel not psychologically safe. Because there is the curiosity that they know that their leader will meet that moment with curiosity through questions. And then we partnering, like going back to the idea of partnering, will be able to find a solution and find a way forward.
Can I just jump in there because I agree with that, and also I feel like I want to push back on that a bit because when I hear that, I think for me that brings up one of the things that I feel is a point of resistance for some people when thinking about a coaching culture. Because I think some people, maybe some leaders or organizations have the perspective that coaching cultures are soft, essentially, or that they get away from things that are essential in running an organization, like performance management and like holding people accountable, or like almost an over catering to psychological safety and to people's happiness and all of these things. And I think that's a misunderstanding. And so when I hear those terms, it's not that I disagree with the core of your point, Julia, but I disagree with that perception, because I think actually coaching cultures can increase accountability, and when done well, are anything but soft and lenient. And there still are moments where we have to manage maybe career things that have an impact on someone's career, or even lead to very negative consequences depending on what's happening. So coaching doesn't mean that we're not still holding people accountable and going through all of the performance management things we need to. And it does not mean that it's just okay to make mistakes or fail, because we're all learning and we're all curious about these things. And so I think that that's an important shift that I would just put back, especially for people who are concerned about how do we do this and how do we carry this forward in our organization in a, like Danielle, you use the word, what does a healthy coaching culture look like? And even that word can be mean different things to different people. And I don't think healthy means that there isn't what some people would think of as like high accountability behaviors in the organization. So that's all I wanted to say and chime in with. And what actually shifts, I think that one of the things that shifts is it almost becomes like a distributed leadership. And there's also a better diagnosing of what kind of challenges are going on, and then some of the strategies that are used to actually overcome those challenges. One of the concepts that I think about a lot and have been a lot lately is the difference between technical skills and challenges and adaptive skills and challenges, and how much those are often misdiagnosed in a culture. and by leaders. And so sometimes we might see as a leader a challenge of, oh, staff aren't meeting or having the output that we would expect. Okay, so we treat it as a technical challenge, that we need to fix something on the technical side, whether just hard skills training or better KPIs. And what we might be actually faced with is an adaptive challenge, where it's how people are relating either to the challenge or to the culture or to each other, and how they are having the capability to navigate those things. One of the questions that I've seen some of the best leadership coaches ask leaders is, can your team think without you in the room? How are they operating without that? And so coaching cultures enable that. They enable what a lot of leaders want, of that independence and interdependence without over-reliance on the leader, and that ability to navigate adaptive challenges, which is the sticky stuff. It's the culture problems, it's the nuanced problems, it's the ambiguous challenges that are often the things where teams get stuck.
Zanele, what are your thoughts here? Anything you would add?
Quite a few. So, and I think the point that you jumped off on, Valentina, is exactly a place when we think about psychological safety. Often people are concerned that then we're not holding the accountability, that performance standards will drop, and in fact the opposite, simply because you then give people more agency to be able to hold that curiosity. You give people a space to think that they can potentially push back and challenge, but also that they can speak up, but also by holding every individual accountable. And the piece you say about then everybody in the room has the potential to become a leader is because everybody then is also elevated and brought to that space of being able to ask the questions, being able to challenge and even potentially take greater risks, but within the framework of that performance. And I like the piece around whether adaptive or technical challenges or skills, or what that is that when we start to look at that whole, gosh, don't wanna, I'm like, oh, should I go there or not? If we look at the systems theory in its totality, right, is that notion of balancing and reinforcing loops. And when you start to see behavior staying the same, and you're going to then interrogate what is that system is bouncing back to here, what is being reinforced, then the culture that is open and curious is going to see that what is the thing here that is making us bounce back, that is stopping the performance. Go, Valentina.
I was just going to say, go there, always go there. I'm a strong believer. If you're like, should I go there? Yes. The answer is yes.
There's a lot of really interesting nuances coming through this conversation. So it's about, what I'm hearing is it's about, as a leader, shifting our orientation to the conversation to curiosity, to allow for the exploration and conversation, so that folks can then come up with the solutions that they need to in order to be successful in their role. I'm hearing that it becomes a powerful development tool in our tool belts as leaders in an organization to help folks kind of move through. When I think of these pieces, and then I want to move to a sticky question for people, like individual leaders turning to shifting the way they go about this. But when I think of it, it's really around, ultimately, we hear from leaders all the time that the cognitive load is big. There's a lot of things that they're having to hold on to and think about on a regular basis. And when we're in that kind of moment, it's easy to be very directive. It's easy to just go, okay, great, this is what I want you to do. Go do this, this, and this. And what we're doing is inadvertently, quote unquote, coaching people to come to you to find the solution and move the thing forward, which then creates bottlenecks within the organizations. We hear it all the time. So ultimately, what I'm hearing is it's about building autonomy. It's about trusting each other to be able to make the decisions within our own roles in the organization. It's about unlocking the capacity that, is hidden through the organization and reducing the bottlenecks as much as possible. So that, we're not experiencing that upward delegation all the time, and we're able to really equip people to do their jobs as best as they can. So having gone through some coach training myself and having explored that with each of you at different points, what would you say? I know what they are for me, but what would you say the biggest barriers are for organizations or even individual leaders when they're shifting to building a coaching culture? Julia, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to answer this question, and partially going back to like part of the previous question. I'm having like a meta moment, and I'm almost like taking myself out of the conversation. And I think that this actually is a really great moment to demonstrate what a coaching culture is. So when we were having that answering sort of that last question, what I loved is a coaching culture. Like if we're a microcosm of a coaching culture, there was not the fear of repercussions of Valentina challenging my opinion. And that's what I think I meant with like that there isn't necessarily this fear of repercussion. That I think, yes, to your language, Valentina, I think that there is this, like, even the word soft, it's so interesting, and almost like my gut reaction is, and yeah, why don't we be soft? Why don't we have those conversations? It doesn't mean it doesn't take courage. It doesn't mean it's not hard. And I think that that's really what you were driving to in some of what you were sharing there. So for me, my experience in this sort of like little conversation that we're having is one that is inviting curiosity, and is one that says, hey, I might have a different opinion here, and I am going to challenge with care, but I'm still going to challenge. I'm still going to share a particular direction. And me on the sort of like receiving end of, being the person that's being challenged in a particular moment. Okay, so then what do I do in a coaching culture? I apply that curiosity and say to myself, like, what happened to me in my inner dialogue? I had two things that happened. It was like, oh my God, I'm being challenged. No, shut down, walk away, walk away. But actually, what is invited here in a coaching culture is, isn't that interesting? And you shared a little bit more about yourself, like the other person has shared about themselves. They put themselves out there to challenge something. And what I find, and especially in that moment, was like, we get to more clarity. We get to better outcomes because we have those different perspectives, and we're challenging. They're hard conversations, they're courageous conversations, but they're done with care, they're done with respect. Don't always leave with like an actual, we don't, it's not always possible to leave some of those, harder conversations with like everyone feeling, oh, good, we got to a resolution. Like it might still be things that we need to navigate and work through. But I think that that was kind of a cool moment of a demonstration of what happens in a coaching culture. That's exactly what happens is you challenge people with care and respect.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked that moment.
Yeah, Julia, thanks for bringing attention to that, because you're absolutely right. It's the opportunity again for the pushing and prodding on assumptions we're making, on beliefs we might have, on the stories we're telling ourselves, all of those good things, right? Excellent. So again, all of these kind of play into that question around what are some of the biggest barriers for organizations or for individual leaders as they start to apply a coaching approach to their leadership style.
Valentina, that jump out right away, because not only do I hear them from folks I coach all the time, but I live them a lot of times, and I've had to get past them myself. One of the biggest things is simply, I don't have time, and it takes too much time in the organization. And I think like anything that's new or feels like we're adding or doing something different, it can have the perception of it takes more time. Because yeah, in some interactions, it might take more time to have a coaching interaction rather than just being directive, just giving someone the answer. But it actually is a time opener and unlocker. And that's why at the beginning, when I was talking about the unlocks that I watched, it's been amazing in coachings with managers at multiple levels that I've had, where by making simple shifts and realizations that they've come to, they have unlocked so much time. In one case, I remember one that stood out where a manager with one simple shift and realization unlocked 4 hours of their personal time per week. And that was just them, and not even to speak of their team. And so you think about that scaled across an organization, the time and capacity is incredible. And so it's something that anything worthwhile is going to take maybe a little bit of time upfront, but it actually will create more time, especially as it changes the over reliance on the leaders. The other thing that I think is simply some of the barriers, maybe it's on the outside, it's phrased in certain ways, but what's underneath it is it's difficult to shift our egos to actually let go of that and let go, or it seems like we're letting go of control and shifting our approach completely. And so that's a big internal shift that we have to make. And again, scaled across an organization, there can be a fair bit of resistance to that. So I'll leave it at those two for now.
What's interesting about what you said there, Valentina, is kind of, in one way, I think so many leaders want that relief, right, of the time or of the handing those things off. So on one level they want that, but then you're right, when it comes into play, it's like the ego piece of like, but isn't that my role? Shouldn't I be directive in this moment? Or that kind of takes over a little bit, even though they actually know that it will actually be helpful, right?
And it's hard because there are legitimate concerns wrapped up within that, such as the possibility of increased risk, because sometimes by handing over, like we may find some situations where there is risk associated with distributing leadership, decision making, and all of that. And the other thing is there might be a bit of a perception of, okay, are we creating a permissive culture here? But it's not the same at all. And so if any of those things are coming up as a barrier for someone, I'd say, yeah, great thoughts, because there are, when done poorly, it can lead to some of those things. But I'd say that's something to dig in a bit deeper to and to unpack, because those fears don't actually manifest when you're implementing coaching cultures in effective ways. And there's lots of great ways that you can make it fit within your organization's culture and still do it in a way that ends up being net productive for everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Valentina. Zanele, Julia, any thoughts in terms of the question?
So I think my main one was similar to Valentina's, around the sense of control, and what and how people feel that they are then giving over too much, and needing to then, of course, what you replace it with is really trust and building that sense that actually the context or the division, the department, or whatever, does not depend on me entirely. And within that is to say, if I was going to look at how to deal with that barrier, is just to take it slowly. So managing the resistance yourself as it comes up, being able to self-coach almost, so that you keep on looking at the ways that that resistance is surfacing, and then being able to bite size, to allow yourself to adjust to giving over more control, more trust, or whatever the case may be. And within that, though, are those kind of traditionally entrenched notions of power and positionality, and who it is, then where you're leading from. And so I think that is one of, or an additional barrier, so that control, but also what does this mean about how much power I have within this space? What is my status in terms of my positionality? If other people are then making decisions or contributing to that. Because I think one of the things that I was thinking about, part of our previous conversations, is really this culture allows for giving space and room for people to kind of enter into a different realm. It kind of opens up so that everybody can have some kind of a contribution. And so if you feel like this should be you and your piece, then that is definitely a barrier or a resistance that can come up.
Absolutely. And Julia, anything you would add?
I don't think I can add anything to what was just perfectly summarized around power and control. So thank you for that. That is yes, 100%.
Mm-hmm. I think one addition, just from my own personal experience and observation, is the ability to truly be present. Leaders are moving from one thing to the next. Our brains sometimes feel like a bouncing ball. We're changing context so frequently in some days. So, really being able to go, okay, I'm entering this conversation and it's going to require some coaching. How am I going to give myself some space to even take 10 seconds of breaths before I show up to actually move into a coaching discussion? Because if we don't give ourselves that space and we just barrel into the conversation, we move into directive, we move into giving advice. We want the conversation to move on in a speedy way because that's just where we're at. So I think one thing I've really been thinking about is just, how do we be present? How do we actively listen? How do we actually lean into curiosity when our circumstances and our day-to-day life feels like we just need to make decisions and move, right? So there's a little bit of, again, I like what you said, Zanele, in terms of the internal coaching. How are we going to almost coach ourselves to be in the moment and move forward? Excellent. So I have one final question for you. And it really is kind of a little snippet. Like, what is the headline? What is the one thing you hope folks take away from our conversation? So kind of a few words to describe what you hope folks would take away from today. I'll start with Zanele and then head to Julia and then Valentina.
So the piece for me that I would like people to take away is the possibility of creating the coaching culture themselves and themselves being catalysts for a different way to be and to relate within organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Snippet.
Over to you, Julia, and then Valentina.
I think for me, along with Zanele's, because I really loved that snippet, is just being curious. When something is challenging, when something feels hard, ask yourself a question, be curious, ask the other people a question, or just take a moment. But that curiosity, I think, really is a driving behavior that leaders can step into a little bit more. And that will have a ripple effect in what we're calling this coaching culture.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Julia. And Valentina.
Most professionals I interact with are looking for how they can be a force multiplier and unlock a next level of effectiveness. And developing your coaching skills truly, not just on the surface level of, I'll just ask more questions, but embodying the coaching approach through and through in your leadership style is an untapped strategy that I don't see yet a lot of leaders look to. And so if you're looking to be more effective in your own practice and multiply that and have an outsized impact on your culture and your organization, developing that coaching, embodying the coaching approach is going to be your unfair advantage.
Excellent. Well, I imagine we could have actually done an entire 40 minutes on every one of these questions. For anyone who has participated or listened to this, I'm sure you gathered that there's some enthusiasm in the world of coaching conversations. So, and I also want to acknowledge that there's a lot of nuance in what we talked about here today. So if you are interested in digging in and having a discussion to further explore what this means, please reach out to any one of us, and we'd be happy to have that conversation. With that, thank you, everyone. Thank you, my colleagues, for your time here today, and for those who've spent the time and got to this point of the video. Take care.